It's about that sunrise in the morning. It's a proper meditation. And that's how we do every single day, man. Them no need doctor for medication. Nature not the recommendation. For manifestation. Good morning. How are you doing? Welcome to the Angela Lee Show this morning. How are you doing? It's a beautiful, sunny day today. We're talking about what does a healthy relationship look like this morning. So join in the conversation. Everything's in so good inside. And is there anyone that that needs to listen to this message? Then just send them the link or share it. We're talking about what makes a healthy relationship this morning. So join in the conversation. Well, I'm echoing. And I'm not going to share it. Do you know what? I'm going to post the replay later on because I know everyone's busy, probably going shopping or probably going sunbathing, probably going to the beach. So I'm just going to leave it for now. I might post it later on. What makes a healthy relationship? That's what we're talking about this morning. It's the Angela Lee Show. We're streaming live on Facebook Live, on Anchor FM, also on my YouTube channel, Angela Lee. So don't forget to subscribe this morning. We're talking about what does a healthy relationship look like this morning. Good morning to you. And as you know, as we always do before we start the show, we always do our positive affirmations before we start. And so I just want to, let me just see, what should I do? Okay, tell you what, I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it now as we're speaking to a couple of groups. Okay, at least to a couple of groups. Let me share it now as we speak to a couple of groups. That's all I'm going to do right now. And so join me this morning. We're talking about what makes a healthy relationship. This morning. Let's play that number again. I'm going to actually post it. Yeah. I'm going to post it again. Let's see what we can do this morning. How you doing this morning? Let me know how you are doing. We're streaming live also on Anchor FM. We're streaming live on Anchor FM as well. And you can listen to the replay on Spotify. As well. Let me see what I can do. I'm just sharing it just to a few people. Join in the conversations this morning. What does a healthy relationship look like? That's what we're talking about this morning. What does it look like? That's what we're talking about this morning. And you can listen to the replay later on because I know it's a lovely day. You can listen to it later on. On a lot of platforms. We're also streaming live on Anchor FM, as I mentioned this morning. Okay, I'm going to start. Whoever's listening, then listen. Okay, so let's start to do our positive affirmations as we always do on the show. Let's do our positive affirmations. And so If you're listening to me, whether you're lying down or sitting down this morning, welcome to the show. It's the Angela Lee Show, and we're talking about what does a positive relationship looks like, a healthy relationship looks like. And so let's take a deep breath in and let's exhale out all that stress, if we've had any stress for this week. I mean, I've had a great week. I've had a bit of a few little bumpy rides, but a good week. All in all, a good week. The sun's been good to us. Yesterday, apparently, it was hotter than Jamaica, apparently, and I enjoyed the weather yesterday. And let's take another deep breath in. And let's release any tension that we have this morning. Let's release that. And again, for the last time, let's take a deep breath in. And let's exhale. Let's exhale. Let's exhale all that tension that we have this morning. Okay, for those of us that are listening for the first time, it's the Angela Lee Show. Let's do our positive affirmations this morning. I recognize that intimacy is essential to growth. I wish to not only further my life, but yours. I can share my feelings, my wants, my needs, and my fears. I deserve equal give and take. I am a good listener. I have empathy to your feelings, your wants, and your worries. I take responsibility for our relationship and will support you on your journey. I will contribute to your self-worth. I deserve to love and be loved. I deserve a long-lasting, committed, and loving relationship. It is important that our energies align. And thank you for doing our positive affirmations with me this morning. So important for us to speak positive affirmations over our lives. Speak those things that be not as though they were. You know how it is in terms of universal law. And so this morning, what does a healthy relationship look like? What does it look like? And so, as you know, I am a transformation and life coach. And so for those of you that are wanting a coach, just reach out on my social media platforms and I will be able to support you. And so what does a healthy relationship look like? Let's have a look at it. We're going to be looking at the dynamics of relationships. And so let's have a look through quickly. What does a healthy relationship look like? And so there's mutual respect. And respect means that each person values who the other person is and they understand the other person's boundaries, because we have boundaries. Trust. Partners should place trust in each other and give each other the benefit of the doubt. I've got my fan blowing because it's really hot in my office. Honesty. Truthful. Being truthful. It's based on integrity. And so if you have got no integrity, guess what? You can't have a healthy relationship. Compromise. Equal give and take. You're not too rigid. You're flexible. You're adaptable. Compromise. Individuality. Self-esteem. That although you're in a relationship, whether it's a family relationship, whether you're at work, or whether it's a romantic relationship, or whether it's a friendship, you are your own individual. And so you have a sense of self-worth. You have high self-esteem. You know who you are. Good communication. And our communication is entirely based on our family systems, the type of family that we've derived from. Was it closed or was it open? And we're going to look into depth with that in a minute. Our ability to control our anger. And again, that's based on the work that we've done in terms of shadow work, any unfinished business of our childhood, any traumas that we need to deal with. Our ability to control our anger in the dynamics of whatever that relationship is based on the work that we've done with ourselves. Fighting fair. And guess what? We're going to fight. We're going to have misunderstandings. There's going to be miscommunication. However, in a healthy relationship, we know how to fight fair. We have a lot of grace. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We know how to fight fair. We know how to bring balance because we're honest. We're compromising. We're flexible. There's open communication. There's trust. There's mutual respect. That we are individuals and we celebrate our individuality. Okay, so we've gone through a brief list, but first and foremost, fidelity. Faithfulness to a person, a cause, or a belief. It demonstrates our continuous support, our loyalty. But first of all, essentially, fidelity is being aware of our own integrity. It's our basic human right, the need to honor self and our potential for survival and growth and celebration. And although our first fidelity should be to ourselves first, particularly as we cannot be faithful to others if we're not faithful to ourselves. And so, if we're not faithful to ourselves, we can't be faithful to others. Our personal integrity is primarily based on our life's experience, our belief systems, our set of values. And so if we don't understand, or if we're not aware of ourselves, then we have no self to give in a relationship. And so it's important that we understand ourselves, that we are aware of who we are, that we have our personal integrity. The ability to be intimate requires a set of values. And so what's your set of values this morning? What's your integrity? What's your belief systems? And to match our behavior to those set of values. And so if you've got a set of values and it's not matching, it's not in concert to your behavior, then guess what? You're sending conflicting messages out there. Not only to yourself, but you're sending conflicting messages to other people out there. And so the ability to be intimate requires our set of values. And we need to be able to be faithful to ourselves first, as I mentioned before, we can be faithful to other people. So the question that we should ask ourselves this morning is, do I have the right to violate the right of others? And you know, sometimes we find ourselves in relationships where we've been violated, where people have been trying or attempting to control us, control our lives, control our thoughts, control us as human beings, whether it's in a family setting, whether it's in a work setting, or whether it's in a personal relationship. And we need to ask ourselves the question that if my life does not belong to me, then who does it belong to? We need to respect ourselves for the essential right to exist for our own sake. And so my life belongs to me. Our lives belong to ourselves to exist for our own sakes, for our dreams, for our interests, for our personal goals. And so over the centuries, as you know, you are so familiar that we have been taught to live a sacrificial life, be it religion or a cultural tradition. And it has been considered selfish to begin to strive for self-autonomy. However, until we attach to ourselves and not detach from ourselves, then we cannot possibly give ourselves in a healthy relationship. Now we're going to look at some different types of relationships. And as I mentioned, that the relationships that we're talking about, the dynamics of the relationships that we're talking about is probably perhaps a place of work, within our family setup, within our friendship circles, or within our significant other or personal relationships. And so let's have a look at a recovery relationship. And so these types of relationships are codependent relationships, and perhaps a person or persons are involved in addictive behavior, drugs or alcohol. Perhaps they're shopaholics. Perhaps they're workaholics. And so they're using these addictive behaviors as a means to moderate their pain or a past trauma. And people have gone into union with recovery partners, which is a recipe for disaster, particularly as their inside self has not been fully developed. And so if your inside self has not been fully developed, how can you possibly give your full, complete, whole self in a relationship? And these types of relationship, they tend to project their pain onto their children, onto their loved ones, onto their significant others, onto their friendships, onto their colleagues. Transference within their environment, biologically or genetically. Recovery relationships. And as I mentioned, it's a potential for disaster, because they're not giving their whole, complete self. Let's have a look at another relationship, another element of a relationship, a conflict-ridden relationship. Now, these relationships are primarily based on someone who is unhappy at home, perhaps, not happy with their lives, not happy with themselves, where there is constant bickering and coldness, and sarcasm feels normal. These conflict-ridden relationships are strained, where people walk on eggshells. It's a closed relationship. And this bickering and this sarcasm it is normalized. And then later on, they tend to see that this is a normal way of fighting, of emotional pain, and bickering becomes an acceptable pattern in terms of how they relate to each other, in whether it's in a family setup, whether it's in a work environment, or whether it's in a friendship circle, or within your romantic relationship. And so they continue with this type of communication in all types of their relationships. And as I mentioned, perhaps one of the partners have derived from a closed family system where communication was non-existent, or the other partner has not dealt with those deep-seated trauma wounds. And so this conflict-ridden relationship is cold. And this coldness and lack of closeness has been normalized. And so perhaps if you're listening on the airways, and if you can identify yourself, perhaps you're in one of these relationships. And we're looking at what a healthy relationship looks like this morning. How can we flourish? And so let's have a look at another type of relationship, a de-energized type of relationship. And so for these people, in the early days, the relationship was full of high energy. It was exciting. There was so much happiness. There was so much passion. However, as time goes on, they let the outside concerns impact on their relationship. And we know that there's so much things happening globally in terms of the cost of living, and interest rates has risen again for I think it's the 6th time. And so there's so much strain, external factors that can impact on your relationship. And so these concerns get into the relationship. Or perhaps they've become involved in their children or their grandkids, work or friends, or even work in the community. However, within the privacy of their own homes, the passion and the closeness is non-existent, and there is boredom and resentment. And so if you're listening for the first time, perhaps you can identify with some of the aspects of this type of relationship. And relationships are so important because they impact on all types of relationships. And so it's important that we talk about our relationships this morning. And so I'm going to see you in a little while, and we're going to continue our conversation in terms of what does a healthy relationship looks like. And I know lots of us are perhaps going shopping or perhaps going out. I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like. I know that for the south it's going to be really hot. The north it's going to be a bit rainy, a bit dismal. But however, you can listen again to the replay on Spotify. As you know, we're streaming on Anchor FM, or you can listen on my YouTube channel, Angela Lee. So don't forget to subscribe, or you can listen again on the replay on social media challenge. And so I'm going to play a number, and I'm going to see you after this one, and we're going to continue our conversations about what a healthy relationship looks like. See you in a bit.
Every day I'm feeling that. Easy.
And as you know, we're all about positive vibes this morning. It's all positive this morning. We're here for growth.
Everyone is connected.
How are you doing this morning?
We bring together a huge chunk of good vibes. It's nothing crazy, it's just music, you understand? It's not crazy at all, it's just music. Multi-dimensional music. African music.
Let me know how you are this morning. Send me a message.
Talks about energy, keep my mind in a higher vibration.
You can listen to the replay later on in the show. How are you doing this morning? I've got a suntan. I was out in the sun this morning, yesterday, and it was so hot. And as I mentioned, they reckon it was hotter than Jamaica yesterday. So I've got a suntan.
You have to tell them straight up, right? Because if they're not on your wavelength or vibration, that can drastically hinder you. And
we're talking about positive vibes this morning. Isn't that a lovely tune?
And in my head, there's a happy place I can go to when I close my eyes.
We're talking about, welcome back. We're talking about what a healthy relationship looks like for those that are joining me for the first time. And for the radio purposes, this is our second episode in terms of what a healthy relationship looks like. We're broadcasting live on Anchor FM. You can listen on Spotify, also on my YouTube channel, Angela Lee, and on social media platforms. So, welcome again as we continue our conversations in terms of what a healthy relationship looks like this morning. And so we've mentioned, for those of you that have joined us for the first time, we have looked at different types of relationships. we have looked at the importance of fidelity, how important it is for us to be loyal and faithful to ourselves first before we can actually be faithful to people externally. We've also looked at different types of relationships and how important, before we start to embark on, let's say, a romantic relationship, or even relationships at work and within our friendship circles, within our family setting, that it's primarily based on our family systems in terms of how they communicate, whether it's closed or it's open. And it is also based on our set of values, our integrity. We've looked at recovery relationships, conflict-ridden relationships, de-energized relationships. And for those that's just joining me for the first time, you can actually listen to the playback. And now we're going to be looking at a convenient type of relationship. And so a convenient relationship is quite similar to a de-energized relationship. Quite similar. It's quite similar in that it is codependent. And so there is a need for other. They're not actually whole in self. They're not happy with self. And so they need other people to make them happy. They need other people to make them complete. They need friendship circles to make them feel a sense of worth and contentment. It's a familiar environment. And so it's something that they're accustomed to. They're detached from self. And there is a willingness for them to settle within that relationship. And so it's passionless. Similar to a de-energized relationship, it's passionless. Essentially, it's a relationship of commonality. And so perhaps you're in this environment where you have things in common in terms of professional interest, hobbies or sports, or the love of their children. And the dynamics between partners is primarily platonic. And with these types of relationships, they are ultimately craving for an intimate relationship. Perhaps it's a friends with benefit type of relationship. However, some of those relationships can actually be quite passionate. This morning, we're looking at the dynamics of relationships and what constitutes a healthy relationship this morning. And so let's have a look at what we are all striving for. Now, what we are all striving for is an intimate relationship. And when we look at an intimate relationship, we're not just talking about a potentially sexual relationship. We're looking at what an intimate relationship looks like, the characteristics. And so an intimate relationship is full of life. It's high energy. It's full of passion. It's full of joy. It's full of happiness. Each partner is happy with self. They're energized with self. They're happy with themselves. They're passionate with themselves. They share both the inside and the outside of life. And so they're happy with their lives. We're not saying that they haven't got any challenges in their lives, because we all have challenges. However, within self, the core self, they're happy. They're contented. They accept themselves. And they all give to each other, their developed self to each other. And sometimes we wonder why relationships aren't working. We need to actually reflect and ask ourselves a question here. Have I developed myself? Have I done the inner work? Have I done the shadow work? Am I giving my developed self into this friendship? Am I giving my developed self into my family relationship? Am I giving my developed self into my work space relationship? Or do I have some deep-seated wounds that I need to deal with? And so an intimate relationship gives their developed self, because it's full of life, it's full of passion, it's full of joy, it's full of happiness. And when tension and problems occur, because they do occur, they are going to come. However, they are quick to resolve these problems as they occur. The premise of this intimate relationship is entirely based on an open family system where communication is fluid, where they are open to being vulnerable, to being honest, to be real, where there's equal give and take, where there's compromise, where there's mutual respect. And so the intimate relationship is entirely based on this open family system in terms of communication. They are forgiving. They have a lot of grace. We all make mistakes. No one's perfect. We're all going to trip up. And so they have a lot of grace for each other. They're forgiving. They don't hold on to malice, which leads to bitterness and resentment. Holding on to past injury, past pain, recalling past events, holding people captive to past poor choices. An intimate relationship, they tend to shy away from bickering. As I mentioned, they'll go to any length to resolve issues. They will spend to resolve issues. These types of relationships, whether it's a family or a friendship or an intimate relationship, they will go to therapy. They will spend. They will seek counseling. They will go and invest in coaching or in mentorship programs. They will go to any lengths because why? Because the relationship, the intimate relationship, is valuable, is of value to them. So they will go to any length to resolve conflict, to be forgiving, to show grace, to show mercy. And so if you're in a relationship, and then we talked about the conflict, the recovery, the de-energized relationships, and people or individuals are not going to great lengths to resolve the tension or issues that will occur, then that potentially means that they don't actually value the relationship. Because if you value the relationship, the intimate relationship, then you will go to any length to find a resolution, to find a solution, because you value that relationship, because you value that person, you respect that person, you love that person, you treasure that person. You treasure the individuals, whether they're individuals in members of your family, whether they're, your friendship circles, whether they're your colleagues at work, whether they're your personal romantic relationship, if you value that relationship, then you will go to any length. You will spend, you will invest your finances in order to find a resolution. And so we should not be delusionized here. That if you're not prepared to go to any length to find a resolution, then it just simply means that that relationship is not valued. The person doesn't value that relationship. And sometimes we need to wake up and smell the coffee and just realize that actually they don't value me. So we need to stop tripping and stop forcing ourselves into these intimate relationships that people don't want. And we need to learn to accept ourselves first and foremost. Because perhaps these relationships that we have got ourselves entangled with are actually a recovery relationship. It's actually a de-energized relationship. It's actually a conflict-ridden relationship. And what we are ultimately all yearning for or craving for is this intimate relationship that is full of life, that is full of energy. Have you met individuals that vibe on your energy, that is so electrifying, that you are aligned, that you are on the same page, that you're singing on the same hymn sheet, as it were? They get you. There's a connection. You click. There's no misunderstanding. And even if there are misunderstandings, you're quick to find a solution because you value that relationship. This morning, we're talking about what a healthy relationship looks like. And we need to keep it real. Because some of us are delusionized. We're trying to force ourselves into perhaps recovery relationships, perhaps de-energized relationships, perhaps conflict-ridden relationships, whether it's people at work, whether it's in our friendship circle, whether it's within our family members, or whether it's within our significant others. We're trying to force ourselves into relationships that they don't want. And we just have to accept that. And sometimes it's a difficult pill to swallow, but it is what it is. Sometimes we just have to accept it, that this is not the relationship that they want, that we want. It's not energized. It's not vibing on the level where we're at. Sometimes we just have to be real and we have to accept that. But as we mentioned earlier in the show, the first and foremost relationship that we should have is with self. And so in order to strive for this intimate relationship, we need to have fidelity to ourselves first. We need to love ourselves first. We need to be passionate with ourselves first. We need to be happy with ourselves first. And so we need to do that inner, that shadow work before we embark on particularly romantic relationships. Otherwise, it's going to be a recipe for disaster. Sometimes, as I mentioned, that we project our pain and our trauma onto relationships, recovery relationships, where people are trying to recover. They're not fully developed yet. And it's fine, because guess what? We're on our own separate individual journeys, and sometimes some of us are still trying to recover. However, we need to do our own individual work. We need to do our own individual work. And it starts first and foremost with self-awareness. Being aware of who we are, having an understanding of self. I'm going to see you in a little while. I'm going to play another number. Join in the conversations this morning. Let me know your thoughts. And I'll see you in a bit. It's a feeling that I just can't shake. We're talking about self-love. We're talking about what does a healthy relationship look like this morning on the Angela Lee Show this morning. So join in the conversations this morning. And for the radio purposes, this is our second episode as we continue the conversation. And as you know, we're streaming live on Anchor FM. And you can listen to the show again on Spotify. We're also streaming live on the Angela Lee YouTube page. And so don't forget to subscribe. And we're streaming live on our social media platforms this morning. We're talking about what does a healthy relationship look like? This morning, join in the conversations. I'm so passionate. It starts with self-love. Do you love yourself this morning? Do you love yourself this morning before you start a relationship? Or in order to have a healthy relationship, we need to work on ourselves. We need to do the inner work so that we can give our full developed self into that relationship this morning. That's what we're talking about. So join in the conversations this morning. Join in the conversation this morning. Are you happy with self? Are you happy to be alone with yourself? Do you enjoy yourself? It starts with you. All types of relationship, be it a family, work, or a significant other. It starts with self this morning, and we're talking about what a healthy relationship looks like this morning. That's what we're talking about, and it's going to help us in terms of our self-development, in terms of growth, in terms of our relationships that we have with the outside world out there. Because guess what? We're going to go to a place of work, and within our places of work, we have a dynamic. We have dynamics of personalities that we have to try and get on with. And so it's important. We spend most of our time at work, many of us. Perhaps we're in education. Perhaps we're at university. Perhaps we're at college. Perhaps we're at school. And we have to interact with a collection of different people. And so how we communicate is key. It's essential. Perhaps within our family setup, we have to communicate, or perhaps we've chosen not to communicate. There are actually some relationships that actually ultimately has to go, that we can't actually continue with. And we've looked at the dynamics of relationships. But any relationship that is actually impacting on your well-being, impacting on your mental health, impacting on your energy, impacting on your vibe, then guess what? Those types of relationships, they have to go. Any relationship that is not actually encouraging growth, developing self, any relationship that is not celebrating you, that is not flexible, that is not giving equal give and take, that is toxic, that is dysfunctional. And if people in the relationship, whether it's, as I mentioned, all dynamics of relationship, are not prepared to change, not prepared to do the work, then guess what? We have to walk away from those types of relationships, because we have to ensure that these relationships are contributing to our growth, that they're contributing to our well-being, that they're contributing to ourselves. And so this morning, perhaps we need to reflect. Perhaps we need to do an inventory. Perhaps we need to take stock and ask ourselves, are these relationships good for me? Are they good for me? And if they're not, then guess what? We have to walk away. And sometimes walking away can be difficult. I've had to do it. It's not easy, particularly when it's family members, or perhaps friendships that we've established over the years, or perhaps a personal romantic relationship that we've attached ourselves to codependently, where we've lost the sense of self. Conflict-ridden relationships, de-energized relationships, recovery relationships, they're not good for us. They're not contributing to our growth. They're not contributing to our well-being. These types of relationships, they have to go. We have to walk away from them. And if we don't, then guess what? It's going to impact on our well-being. Because what we are ultimately striving for is that intimate relationship that is full of life, that is full of passion, that is full of joy, that is full of happiness. And that if conflict and tension arises, we love each other, we value each other, we treasure each other enough to do the work, to find a resolution, to find a solution. And we will, as I mentioned, go to any length to find that resolution. And so perhaps some of us need to go to family therapy. Perhaps we need to see a counselor. Perhaps we need to see a coach. Perhaps we need to find someone that can mediate on our behalf. Perhaps we need to find someone that can listen. We will go to any lengths to find a solution, because it's of value to us. It means something to us. It might impact on our ability to earn. It might impact on our well-being and our mental health. And so we need to go to any lengths. If that relationship is valuable to us, then we will go to any lengths to find a solution. And so this morning, we're talking about, what does a healthy relationship look like? And earlier in the show, we looked at a couple of things. And so, mutual respect is evident in this healthy relationship, where each person has an understanding of each other's boundaries. And so you're not going to violate my boundaries. You're not going to violate my wants or my needs. There's an element of trust where we trust each other and we give each other the benefit of the doubt. We're not thinking evil or sinister things about each other. There is an element of trust within that healthy relationship. Honesty. There is honesty in the relationship. There's truthfulness. There's realness, and it's based on integrity, based on your integrity, based on my integrity, based on our set of values and our beliefs. And they act in concert. They're not conflicting each other. There is an element of compromise, flexibility, adaptability. We're not rigid. We're not fixed in terms of our mindset. We have growth mindset where we're able to be flexible, to be considerate, to have lots of empathy. We love ourselves, and so we celebrate self and our individuality. We have self-worth. We have self-esteem. We are aware of self, and we have the ability to give our complete developed self into all types of relationship. So we're not insecure. We're not constantly looking on the rear window, looking back. There's good communication, open family system, fluid conversation, where there's a lot of grace, that when tension and misunderstandings come, because they will come, we have a lot of grace. We're forgiving. We have a lot of grace, because guess what? We also make mistakes. We're not perfect. And so we have a lot of grace. We're forgiving. We're not holding on to past events, past hurts. Good communication. And so we will go to any lengths to employ people to help us, to assist us. We will go to any length to find a resolution and a solution. We will invest in therapies and counselors and coaches and mentors, because there's good communication, and we value and we respect the relationship. And last and not least, we can control our anger. And although anger is healthy, and if we trip in terms of our anger, we're big enough to hold ourselves to account and apologize and make amends. We will go to any lengths to do that shadow work and that inner work and deal with any unfinished businesses that we have, because we fight fair. We fight fair. We compromise. There's open communication. So thank you for joining me this morning. I'm going to end there. And for those of us that have not been able to listen to the show, you can also listen to the replay on Anchor FM via Spotify, or on the YouTube channel, or on social media platforms. And I will see you again next week with another aspect of relationships. And as you know, I'm a transformational and empowerment coach, and I'm here to support you. So just reach out if you need a coach this morning. Have a great Saturday. I'm not sure it's going to be as hot as it was yesterday, because I enjoyed the weather yesterday. However, it's going to be perhaps a lovely day for you today. Enjoy yourself, enjoy your family, enjoy your loved ones, whatever you're doing today. Be good to you, love you, accept you. And if you value that relationship, do what you need to do in order to sustain that relationship. I'm going to see you next week. Thank you for joining me this morning. You can listen again, as I mentioned, to the replay. Have a great Saturday.
To find your way back home, you need to learn to let go. Remember, you're born free from the victim mentality. So they can call you crazy, they can call you blind, and you could be afraid, yeah, it's alright. But push through, baby, push through. And stay true, baby, stay true.
Have a great Saturday. I know that I am. See you next week.